Hello, everyone. This is Ragnar, founder of Guns and Bitcoin. We'll get this Twitter Spaces started. So basically, we're talking about the pros and cons of both Bitcoin and Monero, how they work together, what the trade-offs are. Maybe we'll talk about if Monero is a shitcoin or not, why it is, why it isn't. Basically, we just want to have an intelligent and fun conversation about this topic. So as long as you're saying something that isn't completely stupid, you can talk. If you are trolling or saying something totally idiotic, then we'll kick you out. But let's just make it a good conversation where we learn something, teach something, and try to, I think, open everyone's minds, try to really get down to actual facts and not just tribalism, not just, well, this is my favorite coin, whether it's Bitcoin or Monero. And so the reason why we're doing this is because yesterday we tweeted that we're going to accept Monero now on our online store, and that also we're going to have a talk given by Seth for Privacy at our next conference in April 2022 at our Bear Arms and Bitcoin conference. So we got a lot of positive, mostly positive interaction with that, a lot of good things said. A few people weren't too happy. So it's because of that amount of surprising engagement, a lot of engagement, at least for us. We have a small Twitter account, but because of that large amount of engagement, I decided, well, let's do a Twitter Spaces. There's obviously some interest in this, so that's what we're going to do. So we'll go for a half hour unless people want to talk longer than a half hour, but we'll cut it off at an hour if we make it that long, but an hour is a hard stop. So I already see one person requested to speak. So it looks like it's AG Leaks, so I'll add him to speak. So I'll say one last thing and I'll just kick it off and let AG go first because he's requested to speak. So has Cake Wallet. So I'll just say one thing that, let me just quote here. So there was a tweet today between TradeClaw and Eon BTC. TradeClaw said, I get blocked by Monero people for saying Bitcoin is a better store of value, and I get blocked by Bitcoin people for saying XMR, Monero, is better cash. I mean, what happened to the early days where we all were enthusiastic about developments in crypto space without toxic tribalism? And he said, this is good news, basically, that we're going to be doing this. And then the response from Eon BTC was, it's unfortunately human nature. Most people do not possess the rational mindset needed to observe these nuances. Inevitably, they descend into tribal religious fanaticism despite any obvious benefits one may provide over another. So with that, let's get started. Two people have requested to speak, AG Leaks and Cake Wallet. So let me add you guys. Okay, so AG and Cake Wallet, I added you as speakers. So AG, you requested first, so you could go ahead and kick it off if you'd like. Just unmute yourself.
Oh yeah, here we go. Sorry about that. So clearly my handle is not AG Leaks on Twitter because I got censored by Twitter. I think part of why we're all here is the financial censorship aspect, and there's just some quibbling over, privacy or, some bugs in Monero or whatever. I'm not here just for myself. I'm here to represent kind of not just the 3D gun community, which I really used to be a part of. I'm also here to represent the darknet drug markets, which have also interested me. We just lost White House market either today or relatively recently. I just saw that in the news a couple of minutes before I came here. Whether it is, whether Bitcoin is good for privacy or not, it was good during the Silk Roads days, and I think Monero is good today as well. I'm not against Bitcoin because Bitcoin made a lot of money for the 3D gun community. If we had used PayPal or Visa, we would have been kicked off of the financial system really quickly. So unfortunately, it looks like, and this is not Bitcoin's fault or the developer's fault, it looks like Bitcoin, in my opinion, is being swallowed or it's being nibbled away at the edges by the very entities that Bitcoin was made to fight. And it looks like in terms of real radical activity, Monero right now is where it's at. Just some quick stats before I give up speaking. Of course, we had the Silk Road, but also Austin of Atlas Arms got, I think, a couple $1,000 in Monero, and that really helped him out. I got Jay Stark, RIP to my buddy. I got him $600 in Stellar Lumens, which I think we would all agree is a joke currency. And that had an actual tangible benefit on his life. It got him a new workspace and tools that he could use to help design the FGC9. So I think we just don't look at protocols and, fracturing of currencies. Look at what it's actually used for. Is just kind of my the thing that I want everybody to think about. And I'm going to give up speaking now. Thank you.
Thanks, AG. Good comments. I agree with you. Basically, look at what it's actually used for. Look past the theory and the cheerleading and the promises and theory. Just what's it used for? And AG reminded me. He said you used to be a maximalist, and I was, and I would consider myself now more of a freedom maximalist, a peer-to-peer maximalist. And the reason why my thinking has evolved is because I'm an empiricist. My training is in medicine and science mostly, and a little bit of finance. And so for me, if the results matter, the facts matter. And so Monero, like AG said, is used on darknet markets now as a preference, usually to Bitcoin. So I'm just following up on AG. So next, Cake Wallet, you requested second. So why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself, and you can add to AG or just your own comments on Bitcoin and Monero.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I'm Justin from Cake Wallet. I recently started working at VP of Operations here. Cake Wallet is a free open source non-custodial wallet for Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Monero. We started as a Monero wallet to begin with, and we've moved to cover Bitcoin over time. And the reason why the idea for Cake Wallet came about is because the founder bought, something on a darknet market, which actually resulted in their Coinbase account getting shut down. And they've had other accounts closed by other people too. And the individual, Vic, is the founder. He was like, okay, well, why? How did they know, right? How did Coinbase know that the payment went to this location? And started learning about Bitcoin and noticed that at the time, the only other cryptocurrency accepted by the darknet market was Monero. So he's like, okay, well, why is that? And did a lot of investigation. And from there, it kicked off the birth of Cake Wallet, which was the first Monero mobile wallet for iOS. And now we're also on Android. So we very much like the Monero and Bitcoin communities. Cake Wallet was a sponsor of the Bitcoin Miami conference last year, for example. We really try to be present in both communities because they both have a lot of great things to go, to show for it. But we are worried that on the Bitcoin space in the moment, the way that a lot of people are using Bitcoin is very, very subject to mass surveillance. So we have, we're pretty outspoken about the importance of privacy, and we like to see in the Monero community just such a good torch in our view. They're carrying this very important privacy forward in the cryptocurrency space that most other projects aren't doing. So again, we're involved in both the Bitcoin and the Monero ecosystems, but we very much consider privacy to be the most important thing, and we're happy to contribute to both communities here.
Hey, great to have you. Great to have you. Good comments to hear about what you guys have built and the origin story. I actually didn't know that story, so that was very good. Thanks for being here. Let's see, next up. So we also have Eon. You were, I think, next. So you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Then I see Kayla and Rotten the Wheel. So Eon, go ahead and unmute yourself and jump in.
Hey guys, thanks for hosting this. Yeah, I just wanted to just kind of reflect some of the experiences I had, and because I've always been a Bitcoin proponent, always understood the nuance, small blocker. It's not about transactions per second. It's about security. It's about decentralization. And what made me realize that Monero was really coming into prominence was its adoption among what are often referred to as darknet markets, but I like to refer to them as free markets because they're really the only inherently free markets running right now. And I started seeing Monero getting adopted in some of the sites that one of the other speakers mentioned, like White House Market, was Monero only. And when they launched, they were told, oh, you can't succeed with a Monero only market. You're never going to succeed. And went on to become one of the biggest markets on the darknet. And they shut down on their own accord. They, essentially the only way to really get out of a darknet market is either exit scam, get caught by the feds, or just shut down willingly on your own accord. So they chose the third option, which is very noble on their part, because the other two options are really, one super risky and one just destroys reputation. So, but yeah, I saw Monero getting adopted widely on those darknet markets, and there's other markets now that are Monero only and growing in popularity. And so what I see is that the free market, there's legitimate demand here, and it makes sense that this doesn't have to compete with Bitcoin store value. There's no claim that Monero is a better store of value. There never was a claim that that was the case. It was just like, all right, we're focused on privacy. This is what we're looking to do. And these people on darknet markets have the most skin in the game. Like the Bitcoin, toxic maximalists who just say, oh, it's shitcoin, it's not going to go anywhere. They don't have skin in the game with these markets where they're actually creating a service and trying to, provide someone with a medication that they might not be able to get, or a psychedelic substance that might help with depression, these things that people are, doing. And then another point was just that, if for people to know that Samurai mentioned a couple weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago, that they were going to integrate atomic swaps from Monero in their wallet. And they got a bunch of heat for it for the same reason, because of the tribalism, because of the fanaticism. And it's like, hey, this is a useful tool. And on the other hand, it also creates demand for Bitcoin block space. When you have a Bitcoin Monero atomic swap happening, you're creating demand for Bitcoin block space, which is a huge plus for Bitcoin. And so at this point, I've had Maxis block me just for bringing up these kind of points. And it gets old, but it's good to see there's other people out there looking at it rationally. And I've come to call myself a Bitcoin rationalist rather than a maximalist. And so that's what I'm at.
Thanks, Ian. Those are great comments. So a lot of your comments was focusing on the darknet markets, whatever you want to call them. And that's how Bitcoin got started in the early days, right? Was Silk Road. And I think nothing has done more for Bitcoin than Silk Road, whether people like it or not. And I would stand by that it still has, nothing has done more for Bitcoin than Silk Road, because it really proved it was skin in the game. That's another thing you brought up, was skin in the game. That until you have skin in the game of doing something, your opinion, I don't think matters as much. Because when you have skin in the game, that's when you actually know if something works and if it's useful and if it has value. There's a lot of discussion about value in Bitcoin. Well, I think if you use something, you're demonstrating its value. So those are my two comments. Let's switch over. Let's see this JFK, the guy with the JFK avatar. I can't see your name, but go ahead.
Howdy, thank you. Long-time listener, first-time caller here. I got a lot to say on this topic, and I'm glad that you allowed me this time to speak. I'll try to trim it down just to get to the real meat of what I got to say here. A couple things. First off, going back little ways, White House market went down not too recently, but recent enough. And like the other caller had said, he's thinks it's a pretty noble move, and I personally got to agree. But one thing I got to say here is that we're not here to champion dark markets, and we're not here to champion illegal purchases, whatever those might be in whichever country you're in. We're here to promote freedom. And the freedom to privacy, the freedom to evade digital surveillance, the freedom to evade a mass surveillance state is what all brings us here, which what unites all of us. I think the most important part of that is that we're all looking and supporting and actively searching for new methods to maintain privacy. Privacy is by far the most scarce resource besides time that we're all probably going to have in our lifetimes. And it's important, and I urge all of you to check out the Monero websites, and the Seth for Privacy is a great one. He promotes a lot of protocols and proposals that Monero should implement to improve the network, improve your privacy. At the end of the day, all cryptocurrencies besides Monero, some will say Zcash, but I'm not sold on Zcash at all, are essentially just tools of a surveillance state, because at their basic, they're a digital ledger. If you can give me a Bitcoin address, I can tell you how much money you have, and who you've ever sent money to and who's ever sent money to you. That's the beautiful thing about Monero. And if we're going to move to an alternative currency, that's really the one thing that nobody wants. I mean, nobody wants their neighbor or somebody that they're going to loan money to know who's been sending them money and how much money they have and who they've been giving money to. So we're all united here by our privacy, and what unites us makes us stronger. And I just really would urge everyone to check out the different projects Monero has going on and support the network, donate to the causes that are going to improve the privacy of the network. And just remember that we're not here to talk about drugs. We're not here to talk about ways to get illegal things. We're here to promote privacy. And in doing that, we allow other thoughts, opinions, and viewpoints and perspectives to come in and share what they have. And if that means 3D printed guns on the internet, who has the right to stop you from having that? No one. If that means being able to use a currency that anybody can accept, and even if they're peddling food or drugs, who the hell is to say that you can't do that? So what makes us stronger? Privacy, most scarce resource that we have besides time. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. Go Packers.
Great comments. Yeah, and I agree. We're not here to promote these markets. We're just stating facts that they are they demonstrate what Bitcoin Monero can and can't do. And I think what we should discuss now is is Monero a shitcoin? Why is it? Why is it not? Why is it something that a hardcore Bitcoiner should be interested in? What are the advantages of Monero over Bitcoin? So if anyone wants to speak to that, feel free to jump in or raise your hand. If not, I have some things I could say, but want to get other people a chance. So anyone just go ahead and jump in.
I just say it's the only coin that's it's the only coin with fungibility. And that's one of the solid principles of a solid economy, a solid currency, is being fungible. And it's the only digital currency that does that. So that immediately, for me, takes it out of the shitcoin running. Will always be a major coin, in my opinion, because it's the only coin that is fungible. And that's all I'll say, because I use my time.
Giannik, go ahead.
Thanks a lot. And thanks, Ragnar, for setting this up. It's really appreciated. By the way, you blocked me for shilling Monero to you 2 or 3 years ago. Yeah. So,
well,
anyway,
I've learned. I block so many people. I can't keep track of who I block and why. But I apologize for that.
No, not at all. And I'm glad you're on board now. So, just in terms of the benefits of Monero over Bitcoin, which is what you brought up, and going back to what I think Eon said about Bitcoin being a better store of value, some people would argue that people actually prefer to hold their savings or the value that they've accumulated privately, and it's actually to your detriment if everyone knows how much money you have stashed away. So it's great that Bitcoin has worked this way over the past 10 years and the value has increased, but it's not really a guarantee. And you really need a use case for a currency to continue to increase in value. And Bitcoin needs to have transactions on the chain, even just for the fee market to work, which is what Satoshi envisioned. Is there's going to be these thousands and millions of transactions, and that's how we're going to secure the network. And it looks like that's not going to be happening, and all of that's going to be moving to layer 2. So what happens with layer 1 security, and how does the chain get secured once the block reward runs out? That's one of my issues with Bitcoin, is that's an unknown right now. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. But with Monero, that issue doesn't exist. So if I'm storing money for the next 50, 100 years, that's probably the bet I'm going to take, is Monero has that figured out, and Bitcoin is betting on this unknown fee market developing, which hasn't happened yet.
Okay, so your argument for Monero and against Bitcoin, I guess you would say, is the fee market and sort of the uncertainty of what happens as the block mining reward decreases and eventually reaches functionally zero. That's a risk.
Yeah, exactly. And the other argument is that holding value long term requires privacy. You don't want to broadcast how much Bitcoin you have stashed away. So to me, at least, Monero is a better store of value, judging by that criteria.
Okay, so bringing up store value, which is obviously a big function of Bitcoin, is a different way to look at store value is, well, what happens to the value if there's not the fees to support the network? And also, I can't remember if you said it or someone else said it. If people know how much you have, is that a good value? Is that a good value proposition? So, okay, good comments. Anyone else could jump in. Otherwise, I could also
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
I agree with Giannic on this. Actually, the store of value. I mean, you guys, if you collect guns or gold or 3D printers or whatever you value, would you store it publicly?
I wouldn't.
I see my fucking guns.
Yeah, so that's a huge issue. Another advantage Monero has is the random X, mining decentralization. Anyone can mine Monero. It's so simple and easy and accessible, and that's going to keep growing. And as a result, Monero becomes more and more decentralized. The fee is also little to nothing. I mean, it's 0.003 right now. So I think you mentioned earlier that you think that utility is important, and I agree with that. Utility drives value, and that's what Monero has, as opposed to Bitcoin, where no one is really using Bitcoin other than for speculative reasons, and dusting their ledger. And there's a bunch of institutional investment that can at any given time, Elon Musk and Saylor, and they can just wake up, go for a breakfast, 4 or 5 of them, and decide to sell their Bitcoin, and the next day the whole market will crash. Whereas Monero is growing organically. You can see the numbers from Travala.com. You can see how the darknet markets are adopting it, and you can ask Douglas if he comes on. How much acceptance is happening with small business owners as well.
Okay, Rotten, go ahead.
It's perfect that Monero is fungible and it's private on-chain, but a lot of the arguments that I'm hearing miss a point. You can transact in Bitcoin fairly privately, and it does not matter that it's a public blockchain, because if you acquired your UTXOs, your coins, through KYC-free on-ramps, there is no attachment to your actual name of those coins to begin with. Then if you use Samurai Wallet, you can mix those coins and you can do post-mix spends, and it's fairly private. I want to tackle that issue. Just playing devil's advocate. I of course appreciate the fungibility aspect of Monero, but a lot of Monero people fail to see that you can. I won't say that it's the same level of privacy, because it is not, but you can remain fairly private if you use KYC-free coins and if you mix those coins prior to your spends. It's something that they don't see. They just get entrapped with calling it out because it's a public ledger, and they don't jump on the bandwagon on the importance of advocating for parallel economies and to foster the KYC-free acquiring of the coins. And just to finish it up, there is a lot of Monero heads that do acquire Monero on KYC compliant on-ramps, and that's shooting themselves in their foots, and they don't know. They just claim, but I don't care. The chain is anonymous, but the record of the purchase is not on the blockchain. It's in the database of that on-ramp. It belongs to the authorities, not to the blockchain. So you need to calm down a little bit on that.
Okay, those are good points, and I'm glad that you said that, because Bitcoin does actually have some pretty good privacy, different than Monero. So let's go. A lot of people have raised their hands. So let's go Cake Wallet, and then I think JFK, Avatar, and then I think it's Nate, and then Monero something. So Cake Wallet, you go first, and then in that order.
Okay, thank you. I definitely agree that you can use Bitcoin privately. Like that is definitely something that people can do. I think the difference is Monero is built with the assumptions that you don't need to be an expert. You don't even need to put in any substantial effort to get a very high base level amount of privacy. And the Monero vision really isn't building a tool for one super cool expert in a corner. It's building a system that itself protects the lowest common denominator. So sure, Bitcoin can be used super privately. It's definitely possible, and people certainly succeed in using it that way. But with Monero, any idiot can pick up any non-custodial wallet anywhere, and they have just out of the box a very cheap, fast, effective privacy tool that has all the fungibility guarantees. And so going back really briefly to your question, is Monero a shitcoin or not? I mean, Monero has more private transactions than all of the Bitcoin mixing combined, all the Ethereum mixing combined, all the other privacy coins combined. So on what measure can you really call it a shitcoin if it's what people actually use for their privacy? So sure, people can use Bitcoin privately, but by and large, Monero, even as small as it is compared to Bitcoin, is still what people predominantly use for transacting privately. And I think that's really interesting.
Okay, I think JFK, you're next.
Yeah, I parroted everything that Justin said, but one thing that he left out was yes, Bitcoin can be used privately now through non-KYC coins, but that is not lasting, and that every single day that ability to transact privately on Bitcoin just gets lower and lower and lower as more coins enter the KYC system and more coins are being tracked. Every single day, your ability to transact privately on Bitcoin goes down more and more. Where on Monero, every single day it's going the opposite direction. It gets better and better. And you just got to keep supporting the network, keep supporting privacy protocols.
Okay, I think Nate, I can't see your full name, Nate, I think you're up next.
Hey, what's up, guys? Yeah, I mean, just when we're talking comparing Monero to Bitcoin, I have a huge respect for privacy advocates. Like, I have a huge respect for privacy advocates, and I came into Bitcoin through, dark web marketplaces. But the fact of the matter is, and I'm not going to be disrespectful, Monero is not decentralized. Comparing it to Bitcoin's decentralization is just not even. It's extremely centralized. The way they can change the algorithm, I mean, it's completely centralized. It's extremely centralized. That's all I got.
No, that's a fair point. I mean, decentralization is a foundation for kind of everything. And so you might have the best tech, but if it's centralized, then you just need to compromise maybe a few people and introduce things. So decentralization is kind of a big topic, and sometimes it's hard to define. I think it is. But I think we can say Bitcoin is more decentralized. I don't think that's, I mean, maybe people have an issue with that. But okay, next up, let's go to Monero, the Groiper avatar. You're up next.
Yeah, excuse me. It's very late in my country, so for all people want to FUD about privacy, I just want to say one thing: stop using HTTPS. Start to be hacked every time. Start to get doxxed always. Start to get spied every time. Start to be see every time, every year. Every excuse me, but this is the problem. See, if you don't want privacy, start to be fully transparent, and you will understand why you need privacy. That's all.
Okay, those were good comments. And I think privacy goes beyond just a coin. It's also your other habits online, whether it's using Tor or other things. It's not just the coin. So let's open it up. We've got some people who request to be speakers. Douglas, I see you out there. A couple other people. I see AG Leaks is back. So anyone want to jump in can jump in.
Hey, good. Hey guys. Yeah, I just want to thank you for doing this first of all. You know, not that you're doing it for anybody, but it's just nice to see that you are doing it. I feel like the best thing I can do here is just kind of shut my mouth and let you guys keep talking, because you're saying everything that I like to hear people, or would dream of hearing people say, that aren't already Bitcoin maxis. So it's nice to see people approaching Monero with an open mind that may be Bitcoin first, that are considering it. I was once a Bitcoin maxi, and I don't like to call myself a Monero maxi, but if I'm going to be labeled as that, I might as well just settle for it. But yeah, I was a BTC maxi to begin with, and I found Monero through what I saw as being its flaws, primarily the fungibility. In terms of decentralization, I think a bunch of other people maybe should jump in and give you some good reasons as to why Monero is arguably as decentralized as Bitcoin, and at least architected in a way where it could potentially be as, or if not more, end up being more decentralized than Bitcoin because of its architecture. Maybe it's a little earlier in its growth, so it hasn't reached that level of decentralization yet, but there's no reason why it can't reach Bitcoin's level and not surpass it. And to really, think about what, decentralization is a means to an end, the end being the ability to transact without censorship, and the ability to make sure, your funds are never confiscated. That's really the goal. Decentralization is just the only means we have towards achieving that. And I think when you really look more at the goal overall, Monero does things in a lot of ways that adds to the ability for a cryptocurrency to be censorship resistant and unconfiscatable. So those are the things that I would throw in there. Thanks again, guys. This is awesome.
Thanks, Douglas. Ian, were you going to speak? And then Rotten, you have your hand up. So Ian, were you going to go, and then Rotten?
Yeah, I was trying to put my hand up. I don't know, Android, it's not working on Android or something, but yeah, just to make a few comments on the Monero side and on the Bitcoin side. With someone earlier mentioned, like, the cheap fees on Monero, and the thing is, it's the reason there's cheap fees is still because there's not a huge amount of demand on the blockchain. And any blockchain that has sufficient demand is going to get higher fees, and then it's going to deal with block size problems, and you go down that road. So if Monero does get substantial adoption, it will have to deal with higher fees. It's just how these networks and protocols operate. And then on the side of Monero, with the decentralization, or that it's completely centralized, the last fork they did was hard fork they did was in 2016 with the random X. They switched the algorithm to random X, and from what I've gathered, it's more so the sense that from the beginning, they kind of wanted this project to be ASIC resistant. And so the hard forks that happened up until then were to find an algorithm that helped keep the project ASIC resistant. And so since 2016, there hasn't been a hard fork on Monero. And I feel like that hard fork went through easily because it was, in the agreements with the community that was one of the goals of Monero, was to keep it kind of CPU-based mining.
Good points. Good points. Rotten, did you want to go?
Yeah, real quick. I think the main reason behind Bitcoin maxis claiming that Monero is centralized is that they vehemently despise the word hard fork. And the main reason behind that is that with Bitcoin Core and Blockstream, we have for years engaged in this campaign of any software improvements need to be implemented via soft fork, mainly because they want for early adopters, early users, not to have to break their nodes and their wallets in order for them to transact. They want to preserve that usability for all their users. And of course, there is also the rampant narrative of making Bitcoin digital gold. So if it's constantly evolving like Monero is, it loses that trade of being as it was years ago, that compatibility. I don't quite agree that it's centralized. I think it's a very nuanced topic. Of course, the main reason behind hard forks is that they try so hard to make the network ASIC resistant, because they claim, or we claim, that ASICs are centralization. So as you can see, both sides are going to call each other centralized, and you just need to draw your own conclusions after you do your own research, I guess. Actually, I don't think RandomX hard fork was back in 2016. I think it was in 2019. Just a little correction there. There has not been a hard fork since, precisely because there has not been a proof that the ASICs are back in the network. So there is no need for us to do another hard fork, even though there is going to be a hard fork in a month or two, to actually bump the ring size to improve the anonymity, the privacy in the network. And all of those decisions, all of those discussions happen on IRC and Matrix. They're open to the public. It reaches a consensus after a few meetings, and then we engage in the hard fork. So I don't necessarily agree that it's centralized, because A, the discussions are in the open public. Anybody can go and read and participate if they have anything meaningful to contribute to the discussion. B, because every single hard fork, there is a code freeze, there is some loose consensus, and then it happens. So there is no, I don't know, conversations behind doors that enforce something that nobody's expecting. Everything is publicly available, and everybody is welcome to join the discussion. So again, both sides are going to call each other centralized. The ones that claim that Bitcoin is centralized because ASICs, and then we engage in that long-standing discussion that ASIC manufacturers keep the miners for a couple months, mine with those ASICs, and then dump them on the market, so they're already used. Not only that, but the hardware that they are shipping, they are hard-coded to just exclusively mine Bitcoin. They cannot be used or repurposed for anything else. And well, before China banned mining Bitcoin, most of the hash rate was in China, and now it's being distributed all over the world because miners are relocating. So it's becoming yet more decentralized from that perspective. And Monero is approaching it from the perspective of, if you got a CPU, you can mine. So it's more commoditized. It's easier for anybody to jump in and start contributing to the network hash rate than it is for Bitcoin. So it's a lot of trade-offs, and you just need to do your own research and draw your own conclusions. It's nobody has the absolute truth in this.
Yeah, good point. So basically what you're saying is that we're talking about centralization. Is Bitcoin centralized? Is Monero centralized? And your argument is that if you're going to say Bitcoin is centralized, you might point towards the mining and the fact that ASICs are what you use to mine. With Monero, you might say, well, the hard forks show that it's centralized, but it's a nuanced argument, and there's counter arguments to that. So anyone can jump in on this topic or can move it to a different aspect.
Yeah, if I could, really quickly, I'd like to talk about kind of why cryptocurrencies have utility, and it's because of those supposed illegal uses. Because somebody would risk their skin to use Bitcoin back in the day. Now, granted, our enemies and I say our enemies because they are all our enemies, did not know or fully understand or appreciate how to utilize Bitcoin as basically flip it on its head and make it arguably a surveillance tool. I'm not going to call it a surveillance tool, but the argument could be made. I don't think you get that with Monero, but the fact that the drug markets are using it, I think, is important. And I think all cryptocurrencies have a sort of normalization that happens to them. And unfortunately, I think it's evident it's happening with Bitcoin, and anybody with a pulse can see that. But it's going to take a while for that to happen with Monero. So in terms of, I mean, I'm not a cryptocurrency expert, but just in terms of sheer utility, I think right now Monero is where it's at, and the ends on Bitcoin are being controlled by the government. So anyway, yeah, I just wanted to say that illegality is important because it's what gave Bitcoin its utility. So anyway, that's all I got to say for now.
Also, to add to that, I agree. I mean, Bitcoin is a perfect surveillance tool, and privacy is really, if you think about it, just the value of it. Like, if you want to finish this sentence, private school, private plane, private road, private money is something that has always been valued. I mean, we just seen the Pandora Papers. What was it called? Pandora Papers. That
Panama Papers.
No, the other one, the one that just been discovered, with a bunch of presidents and celebrities were hiding their money. So I think it's just a matter of time. Monero is the Swiss bank of crypto, and even the word cryptocurrency, the word crypto comes from Greek and it means hidden, and there's nothing hidden about Bitcoin.
Well, I also think there's something to be said about why the government hasn't adopted Bitcoin if it is such a good surveillance tool, because the blockchain is a ledger of everything that's happening. But if the government does adopt that, that means that they also would have to hold themselves accountable, and they would also have to be held accountable for all of their transactions that were happening. So I'm not making a case for something being open and not private, but it is something to think about. If it is such a good surveillance tool, then why bring a CBDC into the picture? You know, what would be someone who is for Monero, what would be their argument for why the government hasn't just adopted Bitcoin and ran with it? Because it is such a good surveillance tool. Because there are ways, you know, mixing your coins using non-KYC Bitcoin. So what would be the argument on the other side of that?
They don't have to adopt it; they just have to co-opt it.
And they can't print more of Bitcoin. That's the major reason.
Yeah, because they don't just want a surveillance tool. Like, that's not enough for the government. They want automatic tax. They want, certain programs. Like, they want to program it from A to Z. But that doesn't mean that they're not going to, and they already started censoring Bitcoin in ways. For example, if you use the coin join, they can just not accept that Bitcoin on any regulated exchange, or they can blacklist any given address. So it's like, it's a slip slope, because all these Bitcoin is technically regulatory, regular forking into a clean, regular, and dark or tainted Bitcoin.
Well, I was wondering, so for our Barons and Bitcoin conference, which we're going to release the details hopefully soon, any day now, we're going to have a talk by Seth for, what's his username? Seth for Privacy, and he's going to give kind of a Monero 101 talk. I'm wondering if you guys have suggestions for him, what you'd like to hear. And then if you guys would want to hear maybe a second talk or a panel or something, maybe in that realm, if anyone has any suggestions on that. I mean, clearly, I'm realizing there's a demand for Monero debate, if nothing else, if not knowledge and such. So I'm considering expanding beyond Seth's talk if there's demand. If not, we'll just keep it at one. But any comments on that and what you want to see? Go ahead.
I would propose a panel between somebody advocating for Bitcoin and somebody advocating for Monero. And of course, you need somebody to run the panel. But I will strongly suggest just to have Seth in a single talk, but also bring a panel. So you have a debate between 2 or 3 or 4 participants and somebody that is moderating the panel, maybe yourself. That will look good, I think. It will look, if not, I don't know, great, it will look at least unbiased. Like I'm trying to bring people from both sides so we can watch an actual proper debate and people can sit down. And of course, best case scenario, nobody throws chairs at anybody, but that's kind of a high ask here.
I think that's a great idea. I think it's a great idea. I'm just got to find the right people to argue both sides. But that's a great idea. I'll have to look into that.
I just want to quickly say Seth is very good, in my personal view, and is a good supporter of Cake Wallet, and I think he's a fantastic contribution to your conference.
Hey,
Thanks.
when is this conference happening?
We haven't released the date yet, but it'll be early April, and we've got the venue secure. We have everything. We're just waiting on 1 or 2 things, and any day now we'll release it. I have the webpage already set up to go public. I've already reached out to, I think, 12 speakers already lined up. We already have a few, but I just wish I could share everything right now, but just hold tight. So hopefully within a week we'll have it public.
Amazing. We're doing a Monerotopia conference as well in Miami, April 7th. So on the whale day of the Bitcoin conference. So if you guys are around in Miami for that, please let us know. Maybe we could have you involved in that as well.
Yeah, it'll be that week. I can't say the exact day yet, but it'll be that week. So I'll keep that in mind. This is Douglas, right?
Yeah, would love to have you.
Okay, yeah, Douglas. So I'll keep that in mind and then maybe shoot you a message and see if there's something we can do.
I think in terms of content, one thing that we see regularly, because we want Cake Wallet to be super, super easy to use, is that if someone wants to use Monero and has the lowest level of sophistication, they're probably going to be drawn to something with an easy UX. And when it comes to Bitcoin privacy, you're probably going to have a lot of people who are willing to attend a sort of Monero versus Bitcoin debate on privacy, who are willing to put in a substantial amount of effort and who feel that they might be sophisticated enough to go against certain forms of surveillance. Maybe they go through pretty significant mixing processes. Maybe they're always using Tor, all those sorts of things. And I think that at least one thing that powers us is that we want to make sure that privacy isn't just a conversation for people who are incredibly involved in that process. It needs to be something that is also available to people who don't think that same way. And maybe if you asked them if they would want all their transaction information to be public, might say no, but don't realize that in the moment. And that difficulty about remembering that there are other types of users who want privacy but don't want to spend a lot more money to spend transactions, or who several mixing rounds, or those who don't want to spend several days to mix, or don't want to put in a substantial amount of effort, they might not be the same type of members than would be present in the room, and it's important to remember that they deserve privacy too.
Okay, yeah. So I think focusing on UX, focusing on making it doable for anyone is important. I think that's kind of goes against Bitcoin a little bit in terms of privacy. Coin joining, Samurai Wallet's great. I mean, they're kind of the leaders with coin joining, but it's still, it's not super easy. It's not like push button, and they've done a great job of making it simplified and streamlined. But it's an extra step for sure. There's extra things to learn, and so kind of the big picture. We're talking about a Bitcoin versus Monero. How do they go together? Pros and cons. I would say there's a bit of a challenge there. Now, Samurai Wallet spoke at this year's conference. He's returning again, so we're going to hear from Samurai Wallet and about coin joining. So we'll have plenty of that. But in terms of, yeah, I think that's an important point about user experience and how easy it is to have privacy.
Ragnar, if I may just poke you a little bit, you said initially that you had some thoughts around Monero being a shitcoin or not. Do you mind telling us?
Oh, yeah, no, I was just asking a question because, so I don't want to get personal with certain people, but a couple people said it was a shitcoin and I'm a shitcoiner. I completely disagree with that. I mean, Monero is not a shitcoin. But if someone thinks it is, we'd be happy to hear from them and say why they think it is. It seems like this is a more Monero-friendly crowd, it seems like, but maybe people are afraid to speak up. But Rotten Will, that was just my comment. Yeah. Okay, so let's hear why is it a shitcoin. Let's hear it. Let's give the lady some space and let's hear why it could be a shitcoin.
Well, I obviously don't know enough about it as much as this panel does, but I just don't understand why you would be against Bitcoin and for Monero. I'm having a hard time justifying why you would be all one way, all towards Monero and not towards Bitcoin.
Bitcoin has been co-opted. That's why. So for my uses and the uses of some people that I associate with, I don't think Bitcoin is. It was a good idea at one time, but I just don't think it is anymore. It's like thinking 3D printing is stuck in the Liberator in 2013, you know, and that we've never evolved beyond that. We have printed semi-auto guns now. If we had just stuck with this dogged sense of having 100% 3D printed, the community would not have evolved. And I think it's evolved in a good way. And I think that Monero will, in niche use cases, will say, not buying coffee or whatever normies do with it, but in niche use cases, it is going to Monero, and that's a good thing.
But it doesn't matter what the government has done with it because you can't stop the signal of it. So it doesn't matter what they try to do with it. It's going to keep burning on.
Well, Clancy, I think you have a good point. And to me, I don't see how someone could be. Here's my opinion for whatever it's worth. I don't think someone could be against Bitcoin and against Monero. I think they both have their use cases and their pros and their cons. And I think it's just a matter of people getting maximum knowledge, including myself, about both and the trade-offs and actually getting hands-on experience with them. Because like Halloween was Saturday. I went over to my friend's house who I've known for 20 years, and he started asking me about Bitcoin. And it was kind of a hard conversation because I guess I was doing a bad job explaining it. So I'm just going to give him some Bitcoin to use. So Clancy, I think to what you were saying, to me, I can't understand what people are against. If you're Monero, I can't understand why you're against Bitcoin. If you're for Bitcoin, I can't understand why you're against Monero. To me, they work together. But if you see it differently, or if someone else sees it differently, I'd like to hear from that.
I guess I'm having a hard time understanding why you would want Monero to be your store value. I mean, it's centralized. So why?
You know the whole losing your keys in a boating accident meme? That applies to Monero. It doesn't apply to Bitcoin.
I disagree.
I'm having a
No,
hard
he's
time.
right, because even if you lose your keys with Bitcoin and say, "Oh, I don't own those," they still could see if the Bitcoin moves. Then they're like, "Oh, well, obviously you own those Bitcoin."
But what if you wash it?
Well, yeah, if you wash it, but then they say, "Why'd you send your Bitcoin to a mixer?"
Well, you washed it, then you lost them.
How many washers have been shown to be scams?
No, but who loses money but isn't able to point out what coins they lost? Like, I lost coins, but also I didn't know which ones I had. In Monero's case, you could be like, this is my address and not all the funds. And not that I would advocate this, of course, but like, you wouldn't know if the funds moved. Or these are the specific outputs I held and I lost them. You wouldn't know if they were truly ever spent at any point in time. Bitcoin is totally different. So that's why when Like, I'm a moderator of the cryptocurrency subreddit, and the joke about boating accidents is almost exclusively about Monero nowadays.
So if I wash my keys, if I wash my coins and lose my keys, you're saying that my coins aren't lost?
Well, I'm
But
just
think
saying,
of all think of all those. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Justin.
yeah, I'm just saying, like, if you end up with output A and you say, hey, I had output A, but I lost it, right? But then it moves at time t+1, then it's probably not a very compelling argument, for example.
So, okay, I'm sorry. I'm like, no, okay, listen, I'm not the person who understands this the best. But what if I like had my Bitcoin and then I bought Monero with my Bitcoin and then I like broke the chain analysis because of that. And then I bought back that same amount in that Bitcoin from Monero. I bought that Bitcoin back. Then what happens to that?
That's pretty.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's the workflow you're going to get once atomic swaps get more, I don't know, eye candy, and it's easier to do. But that's essentially what you would do. But then once you go back to the Bitcoin chain, you don't know where those coins are coming from. They could easily come from a KYC compliant on-ramp, or they could come from darknet. They could be darknet UTXO, and you end up with a hot potato, so to speak. So it's hard to decipher whether you're getting quotation mark good coins versus quotation mark bad coins. And that's the main issue with a non-fungible chain, that unless you work for chain analysis or something like that, you cannot know whether you're getting good or bad coins. And that good or bad coins or taint whatever narrative, of course, is only spoken if you deal with compliant on ramps. But if you foster parallel economies like Guns and Bitcoin and Samurai and the anarchists like to propose to advocate for, then you don't need to worry, because you're only transacting peer to peer. You don't care about what regulators or private entities say. You just use Bitcoin and that's it. There is no taint, there is nothing. Now, if you want to protect yourself further, then you coin join those coins. But yeah, if too long didn't read, you can break the chain heuristics by going to Monero and then coming back. But there is going to be the doubt that you don't know where those coins come from.
But they weren't your coins, so would it matter?
Well, no matter what you do, there's still history there. So that's why Bitcoin essentially isn't fungible. So you can jump through as many hoops as you want, but there's still a history attached to that coin, and that's the main issue, because it just creates inefficiency for all these reasons that you're talking. Well, can I do this? Can I do that? Can I do this? Sure, you could do those things, but it's inefficient to do so because it's expensive for you to do it.
Right. I'm just trying to.
It's inefficient in terms of just a transaction network, where there is this potential to look at histories attached to transactions, as opposed to a system where every unit is completely fungible and that option doesn't even exist. So is it possible to achieve privacy in Bitcoin if you do certain things right? It is, but you have to realize there'll always be histories attached, and those histories create essentially a non-fungible network.
Okay. Well, we have good. Thanks, Douglas, for the follow-up on that. And I think that's a key point. Fungibility we could talk about fungibility for an hour. So I want to wrap this up here in the next minute or two, try to keep it at an hour. So I just want to close off with your guys' thoughts on what we can do at Guns and Bitcoin to kind of foster more knowledge about Monero and Bitcoin and the pros and cons of both. So any kind of closing comments for us, what we can do.
I would say try to make a user guide for being private with Monero versus a user guide for being private with Bitcoin, and see what they look like, see what the big differences are.
Or I like how we're having an open discussion about it and we can have people talking to both sides, because I think just because it can be a turnoff when you have these people come up and say, that's Monero or nothing.
Yeah, Andy, I just approved you. So Andy, if you want to jump in, go ahead. But yeah, Clancy, it's a turnoff, and it's just not intellectually honest to say, Bitcoin is it, or Monero is it, or anything else is it. It's a nuanced discussion. So I agree with you. Andy, did you want to jump in before we end out?
Yeah, I just want to kind of say what some other people have been saying. I really love this discussion, and some sort of a panel where we can have a debate between some really well-spoken individuals. That'd be amazing to see.
Okay. Yeah, I think a debate, or at least a panel discussion is I'll add that. Just got to find the right people for it. But I think hearing both sides would be good. And I think panels are always just fun anyways. They're more dynamic. So I'll work on that. I'll probably put the word out for anyone who wants to volunteer for that job. And it won't be adversarial. It'll just be, okay, well, you tell me the counter argument to this and what's the pro of that. And, let's go through fungibility. Let's go through decentralization. Let's go through proof of things. Let's go through hard forks. Let's go through mining. Let's go through all these things. And I think it's something I would definitely want to listen to. So good point, Andy. Any final comments or questions before we close it out?
Yeah, I would just reiterate to advocate for the nuance in the discussion, because when you lose that nuance, you just fall into that fanaticism. And I advocate for both Bitcoin and Monero. I think they both serve a purpose, and they both complement each other. And furthermore, they both consume resources from the state. If you just have Bitcoin out there and no other, if you can just ban and delete every other altcoin, then all the resources of the state can focus on trying to regulate Bitcoin, or trying to create whitelists, or all these other things. When you have Monero out there, when you have all these other shitcoins out there, because there are a lot of shitcoins, don't get me wrong, but they're consuming resources from the state, the SEC, the CFTC, and so you're pretty much causing a denial of service attack against the resources of the state by having all these competing currencies out there. And in the end, it doesn't matter what people say about it. The free market's gonna show the winners and losers. It's just people's egos get in the way, and they want to say that theirs is the best, but we're gonna know either way.
All right, I think we'll end on that note. Good comments. Thanks everyone for coming to this Twitter space. It's our second one we've ever done, so we're still learning as we go. But I think we're going to do a panel again on Bitcoin, Monero, friends or enemies, and this. I think Douglas, you guys maybe might have been streaming this. If you were, can you tell us how people could find it?
Yeah, so we have it on Monero Talk. You'll find it on YouTube Monero Talk channel. It's been streaming there, and we'll obviously keep it up.
Okay. Yeah, when you guys have it up, if it's a recorded one, if you tweet it, we'll retweet it for people, because I had a few people ask me if we were going to record it, but it's kind of hard to. All right, guys. Well, that's it for this Twitter space. Thanks a lot, and we'll be announcing more about our conference, and we're going to have something on Monero. So thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.